Hey soil lovers, welcome back to Grow with Soil. You know, everyone talks about adding compost, manure, and fertilizers to improve soil, and those things absolutely work, but I've discovered some unconventional methods that have transformed my garden in ways traditional amendments never could. These are the techniques that made me stop and think, wait, that actually works. Today I'm sharing 5 surprising strategies that go beyond simply adding stuff to your soil. These methods work with natural processes, leverage overlooked resources and address soil health from angles most gardeners never consider. Trust me, once you try these, you'll wonder why nobody talks about them more often. I know this sounds crazy coming from a gardening channel, but hear me out. I used to wage war on every weed the moment I spotted it. Now I've learned that certain weeds are actually incredible soil miners and improvers, if you let them work before you remove them. Deep-rooted weeds like dandelions and dock pull nutrients from far below the surface, bringing them up into their leaves. When those weeds die or get chopped down, those deep nutrients become available to your shallow-rooted crops. I started letting tap-rooted weeds grow for a few weeks in fallow beds, then chopping them at soil level and leaving them as mulch. The nutrient cycling this creates is, honestly, pretty remarkable. So, here's my strategy now. When I see weeds popping up in a bed that I'm not planning to plant right away, I actually let them grow until they're about 6 to 8 inches tall, but, you know, before they flower and set seed. Then, I just cut them at the base with a sharp hoe, leaving those roots in the ground so they can decompose and create little channels. The chopped tops, they go right back on the soil surface as a nutrient-rich mulch. This technique has been especially valuable in my clay soil. Those strong weed roots, honestly, they break through compacted layers way better than I ever could with a garden fork, and when they decompose, they leave behind pathways for air, water, and future plant roots. So, I've basically recruited weeds as my unpaid soil improvement crew, and, wow, they work harder than any tool I own. This might sound a bit strange, but deliberately letting your soil dry out every once in a while can actually improve its structure. I found this out by accident during a busy week, when I just couldn't water as planned. When I finally got back to the garden, I noticed something interesting. The soil had formed better aggregates and felt way less sticky. Soil scientists call this the wet-dry cycle, and it's fundamental to building stable soil structure. You see, when soil dries, organic matter and clay particles bind together more tightly. Then, when it's re-wet, the soil swells slightly but maintains those bonds. Over repeated cycles, this creates those lovely, crumbly aggregates that every gardener wants. Now, I purposefully let my beds dry down more between waterings than I used to, especially in spring and fall when temperatures are moderate. I'm not talking about drought stress, just allowing the top few inches to dry before watering deeply again. This encourages deeper root growth too, since plants send roots searching for moisture rather than keeping them shallow where water is constantly available. The key is timing and observation. During peak summer heat or with young transplants, consistent moisture matters more than structure building. But during cooler periods or with established plants, extending time between waterings strengthens both soil and plants. My clay beds have become noticeably less compacted since I adopted this approach, and my sandy beds hold together better. Living in an area with cold winters used to frustrate me. Half the year felt wasted. Then I learned that freezing and thawing is one of nature's most powerful soil improvement tools, and now I work with winter instead of resenting it. When water in soil freezes, it expands. This expansion physically breaks apart soil clumps and creates new pore spaces. Clay particles that were cemented together get forced apart. When spring arrives, you're left with soil that's more friable and better aerated than any amount of manual work could achieve. I maximize this by leaving beds rough and chunky going into winter rather than smoothing them out. Those big clods have more surface area for water to penetrate and freeze within. I also make sure beds have good moisture going into the first hard freezes. Dry soil doesn't benefit from freeze-thaw cycles the way moist soil does. By spring, those rough chunks have weathered into a beautifully workable texture. The first time I experienced this transformation, I was honestly amazed. Soil that had been dense and heavy in fall just crumbled easily in my hands come March. If you garden in a climate with hard winters, you're sitting on a free soil improvement opportunity that happens while you're inside drinking hot cocoa. Most gardeners think about sun exposure for plant growth, but I've learned that, actually, strategic shade can dramatically improve soil health, especially during those hot months. Exposed soil in full summer sun can reach temperatures that literally kill beneficial microorganisms and dry out organic matter before it can properly decompose. I started interplanting tall crops with shorter ones specifically to create shade patterns. My tomatoes now shelter lettuce and spinach at their base. Corn creates cooling zones for squash. Trellised beans cast afternoon shade on the soil around my peppers. This layered approach keeps soil temperatures more moderate and maintains better moisture levels without extra watering. But here's the part that surprised me most. Shaded soil supports a more diverse and active microbial community. When I pulled back mulch in shaded areas versus full sun areas during a heat wave, the difference was striking. Shaded soil was teeming with life, still moist and breaking down organic matter actively. Sun-exposed soil was dry, crusty, and biologically quiet. I've even started using shade cloth over newly prepared beds during the hottest weeks. This gives microorganisms time to colonize fresh compost without being cooked. The improved decomposition and nutrient availability I see in these beds compared to unshaded ones has convinced me that soil temperature management is just as important as soil amendments. Every gardening book tells you to never walk on your beds, and generally that's good advice. But I've discovered that light-controlled compaction in specific areas can actually benefit certain crops and improve soil in unexpected ways. Here's what changed my thinking. I noticed that paths between my beds, which get regular foot traffic, developed incredible soil structure over time. The light compression combined with organic matter from mulch created firm but porous soil. This led me to experiment with intentional gentle compaction in growing areas. For root crops like carrots and beets, I now use a roller or walk lightly over the seeded row after planting. This ensures good seed-to-soil contact without creating problematic compaction. Germination rates improve noticeably. The key is doing this when soil is at proper moisture. Not too wet, not too dry, and only at the surface level. I've also started a practice I call consolidation paths. In wide beds where I need to reach the center, instead of stepping randomly and compacting different spots each time, I use the same stepping stones or boards in the same locations. This concentrates traffic, leaving the majority of the bed uncompacted while creating stable access points. The uncompacted areas develop better structure because they're never disturbed. You know, the most surprising benefit has been how this controlled approach has reduced overall compaction compared to my old habit of carefully tiptoeing around, which still, somehow, resulted in random compressed spots throughout beds. Now, my productive areas stay fluffy while my pathways are firm and functional. These unconventional methods have really taught me that soil improvement isn't just about what you add. It's about understanding and working with natural processes. Honestly, some of the most powerful improvements come from simply observing how nature builds soil, and then, facilitating those same processes in your garden. The beauty of these techniques is that they cost nothing and, honestly, they often require less work than traditional methods. You're leveraging physics, biology, and ecology rather than, fighting against them. Ready to try something different in your garden? Subscribe to Grow with Soil for more unconventional wisdom and proven techniques that actually work. Share this with gardening friends who are ready to think outside the compost bin. Let's build extraordinary soil together, one unexpected method at a time.